Hi everyone. So our first training that we're going to do is pairing and instructional control. So these are skills that are very important for initial teaching in the home setting. And it's something that we use with our behavior techs when there's a new child to behavior tech pairing, or we have a new behavior tech in general. It's one of our new hire processes that we go through. And I think as parents too, it's very important to be able to know what these things are, because I think every family kind of has the dynamic of, you have the disciplinary parent and you have the fun parent, but we want both parents to be able to do both things, so then that way your child's more successful with learning, because that's just, two people that are responsible for teaching instead of one. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pairing. This is very, very important, and the purpose is really to establish a working relationship with your child. We kind of want to we look for the term engagement. So we're looking for your child's responsiveness to how you're interacting with them. So some reasons that we want to do that are to facilitate learning. Most, if not all, kids want to learn when learning is fun. So in order to set up the foundation, you want to be that fun person that's delivering those fun things. It increases social interaction with you and your child. It helps get you that reciprocal eye contact that you want to see, those reciprocal smiles, the reciprocal giggles that warm everybody's heart. Those are the things that we're looking for pairing, because that shows us that the child is responsive to us and enjoying the same things that we're enjoying as well. It prevents challenging behaviors. Most challenging behaviors that we see in teaching are due to communication deficits or task difficulty. So in order to set a child up for success, we want to make sure that the child feels comfortable communicating their needs and wants and knowing that we're going to meet those needs and wants. And also kind of laying that foundation of starting off easy and small to help facilitate the task difficulty piece. And by making things fun and easy, help kind of establish that pairing process as well. It also facilitates the transition to natural reinforcement. So our goal of ABA and teaching in general is that we want the child to respond. And, if we give them a smile and a thumbs up, we want them to know that means great job, and that increases behavior. We know right now that sometimes we have to use arbitrary reinforcers, like we may have to deliver a toy contingent on doing something cool right off the bat. But our goal is to go towards those more naturalistic reinforcers. And if you have that social engagement with your child, it's more likely to shift in that direction and more quickly if you have a successful pairing process that's happened. Some ways to establish relationships, and we call it rapport, are to know what your child likes and be the deliverer of those things. So if you know that your child really likes fire trucks, you kind of want to be that person that's there and providing access and engaging with the fire trucks with your child to establish that level of reinforcement between you guys. And if you know your child likes fire trucks, you kind of already know that you have a little bit of engagement with that item, and you can kind of pair yourself with that item to become that much more reinforcing. So for the pairing process, we would usually start by providing straight free access to these reinforcing items and you just kind of being there with them. And we say free access, we mean that you're not presenting any demands during this time. And this kind of helps provide that guideline of, okay, now you know what your kid likes, you're getting on your child's level with the things that they like without requiring anything from them. Especially if there's no history of demands that have come from you at all. That kind of helps you set yourself up for success as well. So your child's moving from one activity to another, you're moving from one activity to another. Sometimes forcing a child to engage with something that you want them to engage with is already not a reinforcer. So just kind of letting them do their own thing, interacting, getting on their level is huge. So if your kid's laying on the floor with a fire truck, you're laying on the floor with a fire truck as well. And they're rolling it back and forth, you're laying down with your hand down, rolling it back and forth as well. So being able to get on their level and engage in reciprocal eye contact just helps facilitate and encourage the eye contact back from them. Engaging with your child 100% of the time. So some good ways to do this are by imitating what they're doing or imitating sounds that you're making. So if they're playing, keep going back to the fire truck, but if they're playing with a fire truck, they're wheeling it along, you got their hand wheeling it along, and they're making a wee-oo sound, you're also making that sound with them. If you kind of work towards getting in the child's world, they're more likely to look at what you're doing and be more interested in what you're doing. That being said, that's kind of some good ways to start working on the pairing process. There's also the instructional control piece, which is, when you kind of start to work towards teaching. But we don't do that until we've successfully paired. The pairing process can take up to 2 weeks. It can take a day. Just kind of depends on your child. And it's really looking for basically that buy-in that we like to see in some observable behaviors that I specifically look for in behavior techs is your child engaging in eye contact with you? Are they smiling with you? Are they laughing with you? Are they grabbing your hand to indicate that they want you to get an item for them? Are they looking for you if you go to another room? Are they trying to show you things? Things like that are things that we typically look for. And if that's starting to happen, then we usually look at that as pairing has been successful. And then we start the teaching and instructional control piece. So in order to get that, we look at kind of slowly starting to introduce demands, and we would typically start with things that we know the child can already do. So in our world, we call them mastered skills, which typically we gauge based on what we see in evaluation. So sometimes, if you know your child can give a high five, that's something that's a good starting point for you to start building. We call it the first then teaching contingency. So first, we're going to do one thing, and then you can have the item that you wanted to play with. So an example would be your child's playing with the fire truck. We quickly say, give me a high five. Child gives high five. All right, we're going to play with the fire truck again. So just kind of pausing what they're doing and just learning. You might get some pushback at first, but that tells us that we need to be more quick about delivering the reinforcer and just prompt the instruction right away, because that helps them gain access to the reinforcer more quickly. Sometimes we see resistance and sometimes we don't. If you do see resistance, then I would probably suggest going back to pairing, because that level of trust is, what we're looking for in pairing, and we're not able, if, the child's not trusting us to administer that one skill, we probably have not yet successfully paired. So I would go back to that phase if your child's very resistant with this part. So after you kind of have established that instructional control piece, your kid's really starting to respond to the first then piece, some ways we could kind of build on that are to slowly integrate newer or more difficult tasks. So we call it a reinforcement schedule. Like we would do one thing and get access to, that item that we want for a minute. And then now, your kid's really comfortable, you're doing great. You know what? Now we're going to do two things, and then you get your reward or your reinforcer that you chose. So that's a good way to do that. Some suggestions that I have to also kind of encourage this instructional control piece. One is to make sure that you're following through with all demands. So it's really easy to back away if your child is resistant. But that's honestly the worst thing that you can do. So some fun facts there. Like if you just know that you can't follow through with it, then I would not present the demand at all. So for example, if your kid's upstairs and you want them to come down and they're working on responding to come here, if you say, Avery, come here, and she doesn't respond, I have to be prepared to go get her and prompt her to come downstairs. So I'm kind of known as that person who they're going to make me do it anyway, so they're going to be more likely to, attempt it themselves. That kind of helps facilitate the, I'm the fun person to I'm the person who follows through with their instructions. And again, like I said, if it's tough because your child is just absolutely resistant, then I would follow through with that demand that you presented and then know next time that we should probably scale it back because I wasn't prepared to follow through with that demand like I had originally intended. Another big thing is to make sure to follow through with promises and reinforcers. The trust thing is huge and it's so important. And it helps establish expectations for you and your child. So if you said, all right, we're going to do one thing and then you can have your fire truck, then you'll do one thing and make sure you get the fire truck. Because basically, if your child doesn't understand what it means not to get the fire truck, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure because now you're losing that level of trust that you've developed with your child. And it also goes back to those empty threats. So like if you're threatening, if you stand on that chair one more time, you're going to your room, and the child stands on the chair again, but you don't take them to your room, you're losing that instructional control piece because now I could stand on my chair and, my parent really isn't going to put me in my room. It kind of sets that up to where they're now not sure if you're going to follow through with that specific expectation. So that goes for both like consequences, negative consequences, and it also goes for like promising reinforcers. Like, okay, if you go potty 3 times, you're going to get a sucker. Make sure you give the sucker because then that continues the motivation piece and continues the level of trust as well. And then too, just make sure too to be consistent across parents. So I know that's tough. Like I said in the beginning, we have different parenting styles. That's just how it is. But also, like, in terms of teaching, you want to make sure that you're both consistent as well so the child knows the expectations. So, for example, if you're potty training and mom makes me go 5 times, but dad doesn't make me go at all, then the expectations are fuzzy for both the child and the family, and you're kind of setting your child up for failure. So I always say before you're gonna be implementing something that's intensive like toileting or any like sleep training protocols or anything like that, you have to make sure you're both 100% on board to ensure consistency, like I said, for the child but also for your own sanity, because things are going to just take that much longer for everybody if the consistency piece isn't there as well. All right, thank you guys.